What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Today we're here with Njeri Rionge. Now, she was named by Forbes magazine as Africa's most successful businesswoman. That is a title that I definitely have to ask her about. But she has definitely been out in the world of business. She's held a lot of positions. I also seen that she was on the board, if not mistaken, with ICANN, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, now ICANN, if you in the tech world, you know exactly who I'm talking about. So, Njeri, thank you for joining us on the show today.
Thank you.
So, Njeri, tell us just a little bit about, where you're from and how you were raised.
So my name's Njeri Rionge. I was born in Nairobi, raised in a family of 5 children by my mother and father. My father was the first African architect, chief architect of the Nairobi City Council, and my mom was basically a secretary, but mostly what she did in her life is really to take care of us. She worked as a secretary for Mobil. Mobil is an oil company that I think most people know internationally, and she worked there as executive secretary for some time. And then most of the other time she was raising us children. But what she's been really, really good at is she has the green thumbs. So she's a farmer, and she basically tilled the land, and we used to eat food that came from the land. So you would say that we had farm-to-table meals for a long time when we were growing up. And I had the privilege of taking some of that food or produce into the marketplace as a 12-year-old girl, where I would be left out to sell some of that produce on a early Saturday morning until about midday. But in a nutshell, I grew up in a family of 5 with 2 girls and 3 boys. But my younger brother passed away a few years ago, but then we basically all gone to school, and I was probably I'm the firstborn, the one that's most traveled, and I guess I would say also fairly successful in the family. My sister and I were basically, I was the firstborn, she was the secondborn, and then the rest of the other 3 boys came after her. And we went to private school for primary, basically for high school. I then came to the US back in I left the country in 1989, went to Europe, and then came to the US in 1991, and then left and went back home. And when I went back home, I started off with doing trade by buying goods and selling goods in different marketplaces, like flea markets initially. And then eventually I got tired of that and then moved into actually buying and selling from the UK. And I also had the privilege of running my own business or businesses. And I think what I did before I traveled the world, so to speak, because I've lived in 7 countries. Before I left Kenya to travel, I was a hairdresser, and this is when I was buying and selling goods from the UK. And that story is actually well written out somewhere online. But I also had the privilege of going to school out in Texas. I was at Northlake for a little bit. I lived in Irving. And I also traveled the US quite a bit while I lived there. I was there for about 4 years, and I was in Europe for 3 years. So I was out of the country of Kenya for about 7 years, not a very long time. And when I went back, I'm giving you my story in bits, but I'm hoping you're going to kind of get the drift. When I went back is when I then dabbed into buying and selling of goods, and then eventually setting up an internet company back in 1999. And then that internet company has gone on to be a big conglomerate, and that's one of the reasons why Forbes decided to put together the article with my story based on the different things I had done. When I left high school, I also had the opportunity to set up something where I would sell yogurt into schools during their peak hours or their break hour, at the times when they had break. And at the same time, when I was doing that, I was also working for my auntie and uncle's salon as a hairdresser. So I've had a very interesting life looking at the different things I've been able to do. And I would really give my success to my being very passionate about looking into the marketplace, identifying what the challenges were, and finding a way to play a role to bridge the gap one way or the other. But fundamentally, my core strength comes from being a Christian, being a believer, being a, if you like, a Jesus follower, being a Bible reader, and taking the word seriously. And so I've known all along that I have the capacity to do all things. But that strength also came from the fact that my own father, in different times of my growing up, he would tell me stories or tell me, discipline me by telling me things in the following ways. To give you one example in particular, we were going out to a party, and my sister and I had been invited by someone from school. We were in high school at this time, and we were going to a boys' family. So the family had only boys, no girls, and my dad knew who the family was. And when he was taking us to this party, he said in the car, "Well, girls, I need you to know one thing. Every single decision you make in life has a consequence. So remember the decisions you make while you're at this party." So he dropped us off, and he said he would pick us up when we told him, which he did. And these little nuggets that my dad would tell me are the things that I actually held on to. And one other incident that took place, because my parents also separated when I was 13 years old. In their separation, there was a lot of going back and forth on who was responsible for what activities and functions. And I remember one time I was looking to get a new pair of shoes, and as my mom said, "Go ask your dad," and then my dad said, "Go ask." Then there was a little bit of back and forth, and I remember eventually my dad saying, "Hang on, you must always remember that you did not send an application to be born, so I'll get you the shoes." So these are just little nuggets. But I have had a family life like any other child, I imagine, would have had anywhere else in the world. We lived in a good estate. We moved from one estate to the other, but wherever it is that we lived in good housing. And I want to emphasize the fact that we lived like most other children that are in a middle class sort of setting, because I have had the privilege to be asked by people in the US when I was schooling there whether I grew up on trees. And then my daughter, who we moved in Canada with when she was about 11, around, when she was about 12 years old, I think she was also asked the same question by some child in school at around grade 8. So I realized in over 20 or 25 years, 30 years, that question of whether we live on trees as an African people is never changing in some instances. So I'd like to sort of say, yeah, we live like most people otherwise would do. We have people who are not. We have people who you would consider poor. We have people in the middle class. We have people who are wealthy. And so the continent is full of everything that you would see in any other part of the world. But I know that when you live in North America or when you lived in a developed marketplace, you're only likely to see in the media most of what we would consider the negative noise. You would hardly get to hear or see a majority of what's going on the continent, which is nice and beautiful. And I would also want to say that for those who actually live in villages, even on the continent, majority of the people who live in villages are actually very happy. Not everybody living in a village without so-called all the trimmings of a developed continental country or a marketplace is unhappy or is without joy. So I know that there are moments when I would much prefer that I moved back into my village and had a nice quiet life and enjoyed waking up early in the morning to the sounds of birds and animals in the field, and milking cows and goats, and just having a nice life of peace and quiet. And I know that in many environments, we're trying to make that lifestyle look as though it's a backward lifestyle. But I actually believe that some of that lifestyle has a lot to offer for a lot of us who have been over-endowed with way too many trimmings of a developed environment. So
I want to ask you a few questions. Definitely, you said a lot of things I want to go down. Let's talk about your father here for a minute. Your father. You mentioned about agriculture. Now, did he would do most of the farming, or was it your dad and your mom did the farming?
it's my mom who did the farming. My dad was a civil servant working with the council, the Nairobi City Council, as the chief architect of the Nairobi City Council. And then when he left, he went out to set up his own firm as an architect, where he did private work for his clients. But he basically went to school at the Nairobi University to do his first degree in architecture, and then left for the UK, where he went and did a course and a master's in out of Oxford and Liverpool University. And in fact, my dad, in the work that he did in his thesis as an architect in his further studies, he actually eventually got the honorary citizenship of the Malaysia, because the work that he did in his thesis was then taken on by the government of Malaysia to set up the city of Kuala Lumpur, I believe, or Manila, I forget which one of the two. And so he had the privilege of being successful in the work that he did, and actually being honored by a country for the work that he and his colleagues did while they were in university UK. So that's what he did. And yes, so, and then my mom did the farming.
Okay, so when your mom was doing the farming, you guys would go to the local market and sell, right?
Yeah, well, I did that, a couple of times, not all the time, but yes, I had my mom made sure that our life was not all hunky-dory. We had the opportunity to go to the farm, we tilled the land, and we also went to the market. We obviously had other people working for us, but we also worked with everyone else that was working for us in some of the instances. In fact, I remember many mornings waking up at 5 a.m. to go out and send out the milk, make sure that the milk made it to the milk track on the main road, because that's where most of the milk would be collected from.
So you stated you came over to the U.S., and some people are asking you about y'all living in trees. Now, what was your response to that?
That was so long ago when it happened to me. And when it happened to my daughter, I just sat down and laughed. But she was totally surprised, because she said, "Mama, we have social media even today. How is it that they don't know? And the internet, how is it that they don't know?" I said, "Well, I don't know, honey, but I know it happened to me way back over 20 years ago when I lived in Dallas." So my reaction was this. I looked at them and I said, "Well, actually, no. I know you may have watched the movie Tarzan, but, that's a movie. We don't live on trees." And I stopped being offended by such things, to be because I have no reason to be offended by somebody else's naivety. Somebody else's naivety is their business. I teach, I tell, I educate, I inform, and I love back, because it's easier to do that. That produces a better result than being angry.
Well, let me say something. You may hear this with people maybe in different parts of the world as well. In the American education system, it's not an education system. It's an indoctrination system. And it indoctrinates you into a racist society and a white supremacist society. It don't matter what color you are, they're indoctrinating you into that. And so in school, we're not taught our African ancestry. We're not taught about there are 54 countries in the continent of Africa. That's why a lot of us here would say Africa, 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 like it's one body, but it's 54 countries. So we're not taught that. All we taught about Africa is We were brought over as slaves. We worked for the white people 246 years. Then we had what they don't even want to teach you all the atrocities of that. They teach you about Martin Luther King. They don't even want to teach you about all the other people, right? So they purposely make us all ignorant in America.
Yes.
You know, when I went over to Ethiopia, I noticed they spoke 2 and 3 languages. In this nation, they don't really promote or require us to speak 2 or 3 languages. All we have to do is speak English, and that's it. So in this country, they have really done good at making us extremely ignorant in a lot of ways. And it's not really our children's fault so much, because, you know, we think, okay, we have public education, it's free here. You know, I know in a lot of African nations, you got to pay for education. You know, it's not free. So, but in the process of it being free, we have been indoctrinated. So now in this day and time, more and more of us, like I say, are traveling to the continent. More and more of us are opening our eyes. We're seeing, hey, it's not warlords and AIDS everywhere. You know, it's like beautiful places and hotels and resorts and, you know, people just having fun and a normal life. So, you know, things are changing. That's for sure.
And things have been changed. It's not that they're changing. They've been changed. There's a season for everything, but they've been changed, because I can't say that when I was growing up at the age of 5, things were that bad. To be honest, there were moments when I was younger when things were even better, because we were less, we were less, what would I call it? We had less interference from, say, social media and other things that have come with the development of the internet, which, by the way, is a positive. So don't get me wrong. But I think I sympathize with human beings, and I want to be clear about the use of the word human beings as opposed to picking a particular race or group of people, because the truth of the matter is, and this really I believe strongly, is that we are all created as one body of humans, but we have chosen to do the exact opposite of what we are called to do in our existence as human beings. Because God says, love one another, as love your neighbor as thyself. That is really the call that we have. And then love God and love him only. But I don't want to be preaching. What I'm actually wanting to focus on here is, when you love, when you have joy, when you do the positive things that we're called to do, it doesn't matter what the race is. In fact, if you take children from age, say, 1 year old, well, no, that's not realistic, from age 5 or even 4, and up to a certain age, maybe even 7, 8, or maybe 3 years old to about 8 year old, if you actually put them in a room or in a city for a period of time without the interference of a developed mind of an adult, they will probably never notice that they are different. And that, for me, is my test. The litmus test is in putting human beings that are younger into a place, a location, and allow them to coexist for a period of time when they're children, and see whether they actually notice that they're different without being told that they're different by some adult grown up. So the world would really be a wonderful place if we got rid of the issue with the race, the tribe, the place, etc. Because at the end of the day, if you actually look at people who are going through a crisis, I've never been inside a plane crash, for example, or one that's about to crash. But I travel a lot, so I use this. I'm just using this as a way to hypothesize. So I look at a Westgate scenario or some other scenario where people are actually are in a crisis. People come together. People come together and love one another and help one another. At that point when we're in a crisis, nobody is trying to figure out whether someone's a certain tribe or a certain color. People just go and help one another. How is it that we're able to do that in a situation of a crisis where all things are equal, so to speak, and that we're not able to do this on a regular basis? So I think the things we speak with our mouth are fundamental. If I sit here and speak negative words consistently, then I'm giving life to those negative words. And the words are a function of what's in my heart. So we need to change the heart. We need to change how we're thinking in the mind so that what we produce out of our mouths has a better outcome with those who then are receiving it. It's like walking on the streets. Most often than not, if you're smiling, you will get smiles back.
Well, let me respond to some things that you stated. A lot of things you stated in principle is 100% correct. Are we all human beings? Yes. Have people came together especially when they feel their own mortality is being threatened? Sure, I agree with that. But when you live in a place, at least like America, where the color of your skin is a particular social status and based on the way you're treated, and this has been reinforced for hundreds and hundreds of years, and also the system that's in America is actually being enforced throughout the world. We call it white supremacy. And you look at children, as you stated earlier, children don't come here hating anyone. Children just want to play with other children. But when you have a little child that will call a black child, African child, a slave, for instance, where do they get that from? They're taught that from evil adults. And what we see here, I don't know if you've seen kind of like the spirit of America and kind of how, when you come into this country, every person I talk to that come from the continent that here just to even visit, they say they feel the tension when they get here and they say they didn't like it. Well, that's like an everyday basis here, unfortunately, especially if you are African American. So, we have to live that, fight through that constantly. Everything's a color. And is it stupid? Yes, it is stupid to not like someone but the color of their skin. Nobody can help that, right?
And I remind you of something. I think we forget very quickly, and I appreciate your response. And I actually take it seriously. I don't take it lightly what you're saying. But I want to bring to your attention the following: 8 years, the U.S. had the experience of Barack Obama and his family. Take out the politics. Just leave the position of the human being. 8 years. If you saw anything, you saw decorum, you saw love, you saw a family with unity. Then you now have this new president and you see what you see. And what we're not paying attention to is that the power of what we speak from what we see is what's shifting the pendulum. Because in the 8 years that Obama was president, and I traveled into the US, you should see my passport. I'm in the US regular enough to prove what I'm talking about to be true. When Obama was the president, and I went into Washington, D.C. a couple of times, my very good friends actually worked for the World Bank. I was amazed to see what I had not seen in D.C. before. I saw a lot of African Americans. I saw success. I saw wealth in the cars, in the way people were dressed. I saw all these things. And I remember actually, because I was sitting at a bench downstairs and I decided to send a text to my girlfriend. And I said, okay, I won't mention her name, but I said, girlfriend, am I seeing this right? But I'm sitting here and I've sat here before, or I've been in this street before, and I've never seen that many African Americans. And she says to me, well, that's the product of Obama. And I said, great, this is good news. And indeed, I can assure you that people all over the world got to see the element of color in that sense very differently. And that energy is what we should keep focused on. That mindset, that language, that visual is what we need to transcend with. Because the opposite of that is producing a whole new language of the white supremacy, which, by the way, is a language that has only come with this new political environment. So,
Well,
media.
well, let me respond to that. Barack Obama is nothing like Donald Trump. No way, shape, or form. You know, that man had decorum. You know, he wasn't a national embarrassment. You know, that's for sure. I mean, there's no argument there. Now, the response to Barack Obama, at least on the home front, was a mass increase of hate groups. Police was killing African Americans at higher rates during the 8 years of Barack Obama, even though Barack Obama did institute more investigations into police departments here in America. These things were happening during Barack Obama, you know, because they were just, unfortunately, you have a group of people in this nation that was angry that Barack Obama was the president. And they couldn't.
I'm aware of this. This is why I said let's take out the politics.
I'm not really going on the politics. I'm just going on like reality. Now you're talking about Trump. Yes, Trump really brought that crowd that I'm talking about to the world stage now, and really but Donald Trump represents who America really is at the end of the day.
And I agree. Actually, it's amazing how we will agree on this, because what Donald Trump is not aware, in my opinion, he's the best gift to the world. Why? Why do I say it that way? Because we now can see who they really are. This is the truth. This is the human race. He is a gift as opposed to a negative, because the only difference between now and any other time is that now it's public, it's open. We're aware of what is. Previously, what is was, but it was hidden, or, if you like, not spoken about. So if I would be standing up there somewhere in the high skies, I would be saying, God, thank you. Thank you for allowing us to see who we have become as a human race. Because he has been made president by a following of people. And today's situation, the lockup situation, has continued to exist for this long because there is a following.
You're referring to the government shutdown?
Yeah.
Well, you know, the thing is, I say that I've been saying the same. Anybody who understands, look at Donald Trump as a blessing. You say on the world stage, but even here in America, Donald Trump has helped wake up a lot of African Americans, because see, those people that feel like him, they've come from underneath their rocks, and now they're saying what they always wanted to say, and which is beautiful for me. And a lot of people, you know, there's a lot of white Americans that don't like Donald Trump. They want him impeached. They want him out of there. I'm like, look, Donald Trump needs 8 years, in my opinion, because he's really exposing a lot of things that I feel that needs to be exposed. It's just that simple. You know, the hateful rhetoric that comes out of his mouth, how insane the people that follow him are. It don't matter what this man do, they're okay with it. They don't care. You know, even when he made comments about what African nations and that, you know, expletive he used about African nations. I mean,
but even that's nothing, quite frankly, because he was just saying what they have always believed, which is why we have the DRC Congo in the position that it is, and other places. So we Africa, in fact, should be just so thankful for this president, because now we can deal with our trade issues. And that's not to say we don't have a lot of issues to contend with. We do, because we have China and we have all manner of other, groups of people who want to make investments in the way that they have made investments that was not beneficial to the African. And that's a whole other show, by the way. And I don't want to occupy your show with the politics of what I believe is happening globally when it comes to investments and investing in Africa and or not investing in Africa. The point is this, that we need to change the narrative. And the narrative cannot change with the negative conversation. The narrative needs to change with the positive. We must infuse love where there is hate. We must infuse positive conversations where there's a negative conversation. We must stand above all else. And I'm sorry if this doesn't sit well with a lot of people, but the Obamas were the best example of what I'm describing. Even in their worst moment, they stood up and had decorum.
Well, no one's going to argue with you there about Barack Obama's decorum, the way he spoke, the way he handled himself. No one will argue with that. You even have white people begging they wish Michelle Obama run because they want them to be back, in the White House. She said she don't want nothing to do with that. She said that was my husband with that. I was just supporting him. And I say rightfully so, because let Donald Trump and them, excuse me?
I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah, let Donald Trump and them do exactly what they want to do. Because, what's going on right now, there's some suffering going on in America. And like I said, it's just, and the world's watching. And I'm so glad the world is paying attention to everything that's happening here in America. But
guess what, Phil? Everything that's happening in the U.S. is a small proportion of what the U.S. has done to the rest of the world. You remember how we talked about, you mentioned?
Well, have you read that book, Confessions of an Economic Hitman?
Yes.
Okay, well, you know exactly what we talking about.
Yes.
And China, China has literally followed that blueprint in that book, and that's what they're doing in Africa.
Right.
The exact same blueprint. I heard you mention the World Bank earlier, and I'm like, World Bank. I said, oh, no. The World Bank and IMF, them two there.
But this is the thing, though. The only way to stop any of all of this is to do all the things that I know you'd be talking about in other fora. But really, we need to put our money where our mouth is, and we need to change the way we speak, because speaking about what is wrong does not help us. What we need to do is counteract that speak with positive connotations and language, and we need to find a way through the grace of God, because we cannot do it on our own. Through the grace of God Almighty, we need to pivot and we need to raise our voice, and our voice must stand firm with a position only from love. It's the only way.
Well, I would say we need to definitely, love is important, but we need to stand on truth and righteousness. That's what I would say.
Well,
and even Christ himself called out the evil in his day under the guise of truth and righteousness. And once you call out the evil and put out the truth, because there's been a lot of lies. It's easy. Well, once you dispel the lies with the truth, it's definitely easier to come together in love and peace and prosperity and hair grease, but we gotta, definitely call this out, and many people needs to be, helped. And many people need to be healed as well as it's been hurt out there, so I believe, everyone has their perfect work. Some may be the gatherers and the healers, and some may be the fighters and the truth tellers, and but God has his perfect work, correct?
I agree.
All right. Well, Sister Njeri, how can people get in contact with you if they want to maybe email you or ask you some questions?
So they can email me if they go to my website, Njeri, my first and my last name.ca, or my first hyphen last name.com. If they find me on there and send me an email on my comment section, I will get the email. And in fact, my email is my first name at my first name hyphen my last name.com. So it's Njeri at njeri-.com.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, make sure we'll give you the link to the website in the pinned comment, and then you can go there and you can contact her and ask her some information that we maybe didn't get to. And but Sister Njeri, it was great talking to you. I haven't been to Canada yet. I need to go. A lot of people in Canada say you need to come up here and you need to hold an event. So I think that would be something that we definitely want to consider. Yeah, definitely coming to Canada.
Absolutely. Thank you. That would be nice. I'm happy to play a role in helping you do that.
All right. Now, see, that's a beautiful thing, having contacts. So many people from all over the world tell us, come to my country, come to my country. I'm like, okay, how could I do that? I'm not from there.
Yes.
How we should facilitate that.
Yeah, we have actually we have a forum of Africans. We call ourselves the African Expert Forum, and you can find us africaexpertforum.com. That's another way of actually sending an email. And we could easily just organize for you to come and speak to our fraternity, and we will try to reach out to majority of the others as well. So that's something that we can organize. We're self-funded, so we would have to find a way of making that work as a better way for all of us. And yeah, happy to do something to make it happen.
All right, no problem. Well, I'll make sure to let Kellen know, and that way we could, come up there to Canada and speak to the family. Our family's in the four corners of the earth, so we need to go where the family's at.
Yes.
All right, Jerry. Well, thank you. We would definitely look forward to working with you to possibly making that happen. You have a great day, and enjoy the family.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me to speak.